To explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations.
Have you seen something strange in the sky? Have you experienced an event that you can't quite explain? Have you plugged in to a network you're unfamiliar with while meditating? Or experienced anything else that you can't quite explain? We want to hear about it, and we want to talk about it. Call now to our voice message line and leave us any details you're comfortable with so that we can discuss and share your story. Yes, y'all. So I got to promote it while I can, right? 541-680-5180. That is our UFO paranormal reporting line. And if you have a story you'd like to share, would love to hear it. You don't even got to leave contact information if you're not comfortable with it. We would just like to hear your story. Okay, what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about free energy, and more specifically, ITER, excuse me, or the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. And the reason this is important is because if they can successfully reach their goals, we could be looking at real life free energy. Not science fiction, not some weird, crazy, recovered machine from the future or from aliens, but this is real science. This is happening now, and there's over 35 countries involved, including the United States. And the goal is to harness the same power that powers the sun and stars, heating up plasma to where it generates an enormous amount of energy, heat, and using magnetized fields to contain that plasma. As you can see, this is the facility so far. And this isn't even the power plant, okay? This is just the facility itself. So this is to prove out the concept that it could work. And what's amazing, think about the size of this installation, and this isn't even the power plant. So you wonder how big an actual plant, if they prove out this science, how large the actual power plants would be. Of course, the benefit here, when we say free energy, we're talking about more output than input, right? You're getting more out of it than you're putting into it at a scale that makes sense. So there have been scientifically proven engines, machines that can do this, that can put more output out than they get in, but it's at such a small scale, it literally doesn't matter. The goal here is this is the kind of power that could light up a city. We're talking about the same kind of power that powers our sun and our stars. Pretty amazing. And you can see just from this is a kind of a drone tour from inside of the installation. Just to look at the equipment is wild. Now, if you go to the ITER site, the primary objective of ITER is the investigation and demonstration of burning plasmas. Plasmas in which the energy of the helium nuclei produced by the fusion reaction is enough to maintain the temperature of the plasma, thereby reducing or eliminating the need for external heating. ITER will also test the availability and integration of technologies essential for a fusion reactor, such as superconducting magnets, remote maintenance, and systems to exhaust power from the plasma, and the validity of the tritium breeding module concepts that would lead in a future reactor to tritium self-sufficiency. There's literally thousands of engineers and scientists that have contributed to the design of the ITER since the idea for an international joint experiment in fusion was first launched in 1985. The ITER members, China, the European Union, India, Japan, Korea, Russia, and the United States, are now engaged in a decades-long collaboration to build and operate the ITER experimental device and together bring fusion to the point where a demonstration fusion reactor can be designed. That is, when I was younger, I remember learning about nuclear energy in class. And this was like the Ark of the Covenant. This was, if you could harness this power, this is going to not only cut down on the enormous amounts of carbon emissions that other types of energies put out there, but it's also going to generate energy for parts of our planet that have a hard time getting it, because those expenses put in all of the other types of energies that we extract could now be redirected to supply. If you get more out than you're putting in, and it's basically clean, that's exciting stuff. Now, ITER aren't the only ones researching this. I do want to be clear. But today, we're going to talk about ITER and some of the things that they're doing right now. Like right now, working on this, y'all. This is exciting stuff because energy we take it for granted. But think about the last time you went without power, how shitty that was, right? And think about people that weren't lucky enough to be born in our United States that don't have access at all. That is shitty. All of the gifts that come with energy, boy, they come with some curses too, because you have folks on the top making ungodly amounts of money, keeping the system running essentially the way it is. I always get afraid programs like this are going to get sabotaged, essentially, because large producers of energy, fossil fuels, they don't want this breakthrough, at least not right now. They agreed a long time ago they weren't going to do anything about the potential impacts that humans have, the potential impacts that oil and fossil fuels have on our environment. They decided not their problem. Okay, fair enough. So if that's the case, and we're in a capitalistic country where we vote with our dollar, my dollar is going to this stuff then. I know there's been advances in solar, but let's be real, y'all. I feel like if solar could have done it, it would have done it by now. Solar's great. Solar provides a lot of power around the country, around the globe, frankly. But it's not a game changer. It's very expensive. It's very wasteful. What do you think they make those solar panels out of? And take a look at that process and how dirty that process is. If we're talking about trying not to pollute. I mean, solar, creating of all that plastic, all those cells, and then what happens to that stuff when it's not useful anymore? It doesn't get recycled. It goes into a landfill. It's like the wind doohickeys, right? The windmills. They seem like a great idea. And you hear about birds getting massacred and the hardware constantly breaks. And instead of fixing it, they typically just replace the hardware. And so all this other hardware just goes right into the trash. Now that doesn't seem so bad with one windmill. But if you try to scale that, that's not going to work. And this is something we really need to focus on. I'm in the Northwest. Just the other day, we found out we lost $1 billion in clean energy grants. You know how much $1 billion is? A lot. It's a lot. It's jobs. It's communities impacted by this. And the environment. I mean, the goal was to promote clean energy and get behind clean energy. So ITER, their current goal is successful deuterium fusion operation in 2035, followed by full magnetic energy and plasma current operation. This is not science fiction. This is, again, the energy that powers the sun and the stars at our fingertips. If you can create that kind of energy, think of, it's exciting to think about the type of problems it would solve. So taking out the fear of these oil execs and fossil fuel execs trying to sabotage and tank it, which we've seen time and time again. I'll be real. What inspired me to do this space today is I just recently watched a documentary called The White House Effect. It's on Netflix. It's a great documentary. It talks about how climate change always takes a back seat to corporate interests and the economy. Nobody wants to bite the bullet. Nobody wants to be the one to say, okay, I'm going to use a little less. I'm going to consume a little less. I'm going to put out some effort and try to help do what I can. Maybe I won't leave the TV running at night. Maybe I will make sure all the lights are off every time I leave the house. Just little things you can do that actually do make a difference, because there are so many of us. And if so many of us get on the same page with stuff like that, we can make positive changes just by doing that, just by curbing our usage. So ITER, they recently had a conference in China. And we're going to go ahead and look at the opening kind of promotional video they ran there. And this is, again, they have stuff going back literally over a decade, y'all. This program's been going on since '85. So this was this year's expo that they held. And this was how they kicked it off. This was the video here. We're going to take a look.
The population's growing quickly, and the demand for energy along with it.
As long as you are a human being on the earth, we need energy.
There is 1.5 billion people over the earth that don't have electricity.
We're really struggling to keep up with energy demand across the globe. The fossil fuels that we're using are doing serious damage to the climate.
We keep increasing carbon dioxide production, and it's still going, in the wrong direction. We have to find a solution.
We have the potential and the capabilities to have cleaner sources of energy and more diverse sources of energy as well.
Fusion is basically when two hydrogen isotopes fuse together. They create a neutron, and this neutron has more energy than you could possibly imagine.
So much energy, there was nothing to stop them. If it was in space, it will travel from here to the moon in 8 seconds.
It's the energy that powers the sun and the stars. It's just really hard to make that happen on Earth.
To get that same kind of collision of nuclei, we need really high temperatures.
So how do you deal with such a medium on Earth?
We're building a tokamak, which is a machine that recreates the sun on Earth.
We will generate vacuum and then plasmas and then heat them up to a really high temperature.
At ITER, we are building the tokamak as a place where you can really test as a basis for the future machines.
Behind me is the construction site of the ITER project.
You will have 440 modules of a blanket covering all the vacuum vessel and facing the plasma, and roughly about 600 meters square in area.
So you can think of a plasma as a ring of lightning which is traveling around the machine, held by strong magnets.
The process is called magnetic confinement because basically it allows the plasma to be compressed and separated from the wall by a magnetic field. Yeah, so without magnet it doesn't work.
So in the tokamak we have several types of magnets.
These 18 blocks that you see surrounding the center here, they are the supports for the toroidal or D-shaped vertical magnets that will surround the vacuum vessel. And in the end, when this is going to be removed, there will be a massive central solenoid. This will be the strongest magnet ever built by mankind.
Used to power the plasma.
Because they have to be really strong. The magnets are super cool. They're one of the coldest things in the universe.
So in 10 meters, you go from nearly absolute zero to 150 million degrees. I can't imagine anywhere in space where you can find this kind of gradient.
The role of ITER is really to demonstrate both the principle and the technology and the safety aspects on a device which has the size of a reactor.
What we're trying to do at ITER is show that you can get more energy coming out of the machine than you put in.
We are building the fusion device at industrial scale, which nobody have ever done.
What we are trying to do in ITER, get the physics sorted, but do it in an environment which would be utilizable in the future.
ITER is a sort of convergent national laboratory for all of the 35 countries involved to show that countries are able to work together in a sustained manner over several decades on a single conjoined goal.
A lot of people are working at ITER, not only on the site, but all over the world.
We have great engineers across the world. Imagine that you need to build two components. One company located in Europe and the component mirroring that is manufactured in Asia. You need to perfectly match and build the machine at almost like sub-millimeter precision. These genius engineers, they are scratching their head to come up with the engineering solution for the ITER.
There are tons of opportunities at ITER, so not just ones that we would normally think of that are associated with fusion.
Of course, we need scientists, but we also need engineers.
Electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, or material science, or it could be more like on the diagnostics.
But on top of that, we have administration, we have legal,
finance, procurement, communications, logistical, secretarial, assistant.
Working at ITER takes all kinds of people.
The fusion, you collide two different things, particles, together to fuse, and that will bring a lot of energy out. At ITER, we bring different people, we work together, we have much bigger innovation happening.
はじめまして、ITER へようこそ。私の名前は大前隆義と言います。ITER の万博のコミッショナーを務めております。また、普段は南フランスで ITER 建設のプロジェクトマネジメントオフィスをやっております。
We're really looking for people to come join us in the journey to reach fusion.
Expo is an opportunity to showcase the future design to the new generation. It is where the next generation starts realizing that future. That's beautiful.
You question, like, why are you planting the seeds? It's not for me, but it's for future generations.
For my daughter.
I may not see the day when my entire phones and devices are harnessed by fusion, but if I don't do that today, My kids will never gain that.
We know about the need for clean energy, baseload energy from climate change. Other countries characterize it more strongly in terms of energy security. What is the cost of geopolitical strife, armed conflicts, trade wars, etc., to position yourself next to petroleum resources?
We better put all the required effort on it sooner than later.
We have so much more to learn.
We have to work more, say, in a more expedite way in order to address the problem of this planet. We have to work faster, I think.
It's so significant impact to our society, and we have to do today.
Because we will need it.
Pretty cool. And yeah, you go to their website, they are hiring. And man, I'm a few months away from my bachelor's in project management. So maybe I'll have to check it out, because I tell you, that would be pretty exciting to be a part of that, right? To be a part of, I'm trying not to call it free energy, because it's not free, but it would be a complete shift. In the UFO, UAP, whatever, alternate science community, you hear so many theories on like free energy, 0 point energy, I think is one of them. And it's like, it's great theory, and it's great to kick around. And in fact, I know many folks have made breakthroughs with a lot of different approaches. But right now, like, if you look at our energy problem, I mean, regular nuclear energy would be better than what we're doing with fossil fuels. And that's just regular nuclear energy, which is going to create bucket loads of plutonium, which is not good, is very dirty, and some of it can be made into weapons grade plutonium or dirty bombs and weapons. So that's all bad, right? But this type of fusion is clean. And, it's the cleanest we would have created to date. And 35 countries involved in this program. So if you care about the free energy, the energy problem, I mean, I think something like this, it would be where you'd want to invest at least some of your time, at least investigate it, right? If you take a look at that, just the craftsmanship is incredible. These are very intelligent people that could be spending their time, efforts, energy, brain power on a lot of things. And this is where they're at. And it did point out Asia made a precision part there. I want to point out the US made the actual magnets that do the harnessing of the plasma. Booyah. Yep, that was us. United States contributed that. Talk about precision. Pretty sweet. Okay, so they recently had this conference in Osaka where their director spoke, and they had to make kind of some changes to their goals. They made some adjustments. Obviously, that's kind of what you have to do in science, right? Like, you discover new things and you realize, oh, that doesn't work, or that does work. We have to take this approach, that approach. So their main goal now is, I said it earlier, successful deuterium fusion by 2035, followed by full magnetic energy and plasma current operation. So by 2035, they want to be actually generating a current using this process. A current that could be used to power whatever. That is incredible. Nobody's talking about it. We're potentially 10 years away from cold fusion. Nobody's talking about it. It's incredible. Okay, so this is the, they call him Director General because it is a joint, as I said, you have 35 countries involved. So he's going to talk about the progress to date. Again, this concept started in 95. Or was it 85? I think it was 85. It was when the actual idea started. And it might have been 95 when they actually broke ground on it. But we're looking at essentially over 30 years, either way you cut it, over 30 years of dedication to this project by these scientists. All right, let's listen to the director here, Director General, as he talks. And again, this was just a couple weeks ago at this expo in Chengdu. Let's check it out.
The progress in the schedule. I would like to have some perspective about some of the history of this project, because now that we are back on track, I think many of you may have some questions about why we got ITER in the first place, like the way it is, and then also try to give you an outlook on how ITER could be useful today. So now when I was here, well, I wasn't here. When I was in London at the Fusion Energy Conference 2 years ago, the situation was not as good as it is now, not even close. I mean, we had very difficult problems with of repair that we had to deal. We had problem with the regulator. We had to deal with a schedule that was hardly ever kept in this project. And I think that in as much as you are disappointed of that, I was also very disappointed. So it was a challenge for us to try to deal with these problems, and I will show you that I think now these problems are, say, under control. So first on the repair. You remember 2 years ago, maybe you don't, but 2 years ago we had some issues of repair of the vacuum vessel and also of the thermal shield. And we transparently communicated to the community all the technical details about these issues, because we are really keen to make sure that nobody else will do mistakes as such. So we have now set up essentially a workshop at ITER site, and we have progressed with the repair of the bevels to build up some by TIG welding, build up the bevels. But this is not that simple. It had to be also, of course, machined and tested, and we also had to deal with the questions from the regulator, but all of that is okay. And as much as okay is also has been the repair of the thermal shield, where we had to remove all the pipes from the thermal shield, the cooling pipes, and proceed with the removal of some materials to avoid that there would be any residue of stress corrosion, and pipes rewelded and repolished to have the level of emissivity that we wanted to achieve. Likewise, on the central solenoid, we achieved pretty good progress. Now we have...
Okay, so he talked about kind of some disappointment there and a shortcoming on a goal. And this is looking back at 2020. This is essentially kind of what he's talking about. One moment here. I seem to have lost my audio on the screen sharing, so I'm going to have to quit that and start again. My apologies, folks. These silly streaming issues. At any rate, we're going to take a look real quick at a 2020 video that gets into kind of what he's talking about. Here we go. Okay. So this has that promotional feeling, but this is essentially was 2020 at a similar expo where they were talking about making these additions to the plant. And what the Director General was referring to were some issues they had with those additions. Let's check this out. This was in 2020.
ITER, the world's largest tokamak, will demonstrate the scientific and technical feasibility of fusion power. 30 meters in diameter and nearly as many in height, the ITER tokamak is a marvel of engineering, created from an estimated 1 million components. The size and weight of the major components, the tiny tolerances for the assembly of major systems, the diversity of manufacturers, the tight schedule, all of these elements combine to make ITER an engineering and logistics challenge of enormous proportions. It was in November 2006 when the 7 ITER partners gave the starting signal for one of the largest international scientific endeavors ever attempted. Soon after, diggers and scrapers moved in to prepare the 180-hectare stage. The following years, an international team of physicists and engineers pushed hard to complete the machine's design and begin awarding the first contracts to industry. And here we are today, 14 years into realization, celebrating the official start of machine assembly. Despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have managed to maintain critical activities on the worksite, including the reception of a number of ITER's exceptional first-of-a-kind components. In March, the European domestic agency, Fusion for Energy, put the finishing touches on ITER's assembly theatre. A vast hall for preparing, then installing machine components. In April, the first 2 toroidal field coils, superconducting magnets weighing 360 tons each, arrived from Italy and Japan. In May, the 1,250-ton cryostat base, supplied by India, was successfully positioned in the tokamak pit. Late June, the first ring-shaped poloidal field coil procured by Europe arrived from its manufacturing site in Hefei, China. Russia and the United States are also progressing in the procurement of critical path components for ITER. Finally, the first sector of the ITER vacuum vessel shipped by South Korea has arrived on French soil and will soon be transported along the ITER itinerary to the worksite. The buildings and infrastructure needed for first plasma are 75% complete, and the pace on planet ITER is picking up as machine and plant components arrive from the 7 ITER members. The time has come to put the world's largest puzzle together, the assembly of the ITER machine. Following the spectacular lowering of the cryostat base, the further assembly of the ITER tokamak will proceed in a bottom-up fashion. Machine installation will continue with the lower cryostat components, the lower thermal shields, and the temporary support structures for poloidal field coil number 6. A set of spare pre-compression rings are the next in line, followed by the central support structure and the 18 gravity supports for ITER's huge toroidal field coils. Thermal shields that will help protect the superconducting coils are attached, and finally, poloidal field coil number 6 is lowered into the pit, followed by poloidal field coil number 5. In order to prepare for the arrival of the pre-assembled vessel sectors, an inner support column, a work floor, and 7 radial beams are put in place to stabilize the structure during assembly and welding. While the lower cryostat components are being assembled and welded in the tokamak pit, 2 giants are standing in wait in the adjacent assembly hall. Standing 6 stories high, the purpose-built sub-assembly tools will suspend each of the 9 sectors of the vacuum vessel in turn, while thermal shield panels and toroidal field coils are rotated into position. By the end of this year, the first completed sub-assembly will be transferred to the tokamak pit. 8 others will follow.
Okay, now, excuse me, tokamak. Tokamak is an experimental machine designed to harness the energy of fusion. Inside of it, a fusion plasma is created and then confined by strong magnetic fields. The energy produced through the fusion of atoms in the plasma is absorbed as heat in the walls of the vessel. So, similar to a conventional plant, a fusion power plant will use the heat to produce steam and then electricity by way of turbines and generators. So the tokamak is kind of like the heart of the machine, if you will. It's the piece that's actually going to harness the plasma, generate the heat, and then we take it from there as far as distributing that heat and turning it into energy. And what you don't hear is the word burn. Generating heat. We're not burning anything. We're not making smoke, and we're not putting that up into the environment, into the air.
Last in line is the 18-meter tall central solenoid. The powerful electromagnet will be the last major component to be installed in the machine pit before the cryostat is closed up. In all, dozens of custom tools will be required to assemble, lift, and finally maneuver ITER's super-sized components. The tools will have a range of lift capacities, 500 tons for the upending tool that will turn vacuum vessel components from horizontal to vertical and...
Okay, and you could see from the pictures I shared and the drone footage that we looked at earlier that they were able to successfully complete that erection. And in 2025, just this last June, they are at the point where they have 2 of those massive vacuum sealed vessel sectors that it showed earlier. It has 2 of those sector modules. They were installed, and they are side by side in the tokamak pit. And so you can see it's moving along. This thing is moving along. Doesn't really matter what the cost is if they hit roadblocks. This is 2020, this video is, and you heard him mention COVID-19. Ugh, it gave me like a chill down my spine. But they made it through that, and they're still trucking. As I mentioned earlier, the U.S., we completed manufacturing and testing of the 6th central solenoid module. Multiple modules are already on the assembly platform. And what the director was referring to was the damaged unit that had to be repaired for use as a spare. And that is where he said, when he was talking about the disappointment, oops, I don't know why I went to that screen. But when he was talking about disappointment of the year, that's what he was referring to, was the issue with the solenoid. But they're still making great progress. And the goal of generating plasma heat by 2035 is like, yeah, that in the big scheme of things, big scheme of things, that is right around the corner. I mean, we could be right around the corner from turning off fossil fuels. I mean, probably not completely, obviously. We're gonna need fossil fuels for a lot of things still. But as far as home and business power generation, this could be huge. I mean, could you imagine getting an electric bill for like $1 or something? That's what this could mean. All right, we'll let the director continue. Again, this was just a couple weeks ago, October 20th, 2025, at the IAEA in Chengdu, China.
We have all the 6 modules delivered from General Atomics, except the spare one that will come shortly. 5 are stacked. I think the 5th was stacked last week. And now we will proceed with assembly of the full system, say the pre-assembly of the full system. All TF coils are on site, and you see 2 of them on the appending tools, which are used to put the coils in a vertical position before the pre-assembly of the sector modules. All the PF coils have been fabricated. Here, the last one fabricated in the middle of last year. So this had to be fabricated on site, could not be transported. So except the 2 small PF1 and PF6 who could be transported, all the other coils had to be, all the other PF coils had to be fabricated. And likewise for the error field correction coils, that's where we have 6 that are installed, and then we have the other 12 are either completed or already on site. The vacuum vessel sector, which has been a big concern in terms of delivery and where we have a lot of lessons learned that we will have to compile and communicate. We have all the 4 sectors from Korea. 2 are already in the pit, as I will show you, repaired and back in the pit. And we have, say, 1 now on the assembly frame, 1 under repair. And we have, say, 2 sectors from Europe and 3 more to come that should come during the course of next year. Of course, we are following very closely the progress on that. We have progress on many, many fronts. I don't have time today to show you all the image that would pay tribute to all the work that pretty much all of you are working on this project. But a few highlight, again, is on the divertor cassettes. Production is ongoing. The qualification phase for all high flux components is completed. And the serial production is well underway. So that is going to be an activity that we will have to follow closely because we will plan now with a new baseline to install the divertor at the beginning. So how we stay now with the sector module? When I came at the Fusion Energy Conference 2 years ago, we had to remove 1 sector module to repair it. And so in the meantime, we have removed it, we have dismantled it, we have repaired it, and we have put it inside, again, the machine. And so did we with the second one. Now, to give you things in perspective, I will show you a little movie of a very interesting moment, which is when we put the sector module, we lift the sector module from the assembly frames onto the pit. Okay, we have now an execution rate on the sector module pre-assembly, which takes between 5 and 6 months. Take into account that the first sector module took about 18 months. So the first one that we have to repair, while this one, sector module 6 and 7, took about 6 months each. And we will try, we are trying to go even faster. The result is that sector module 6 that was installed, say, in the middle of the year before the ITER Council was done, so compared with the baseline, about 7 weeks ahead of schedule. So very proud of that. Now, we have now 2 sector modules in the assembly hall, which are being, say, prepared. One of them is the sector module 5, the first one from Europe, which we plan to install probably early December. Again, it should be several weeks, probably 6-7 weeks ahead of schedule. And then the third Korean sector module, sector 8, that will follow immediately after. But what is very important for us are the odd 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 total 9 sector modules, because that is on the critical path. So, critical path now on this assembly is between 6 to 7 weeks ahead of schedule. So, and we want to keep it like that. So not enough time, again, to tell you all what is going on, but also on other fronts we are making progress, apart from very large progress on the plant systems that I will not have the time to explain about. We have now progress on the assembly and later on commissioning of electron cyclotron system. This is one of the first gyrotrons that we have now installed, and now the magnet has been energized. We have progress also on the neutral beams, where Mythica, we have 2 facilities for ITER. Of course, we will also benefit from all the work being done at ASIP, but say we have 2 facilities to reach 1 megavolt. We have Mythica and Spider. There will be a dedicated talk, by the way, on Wednesday on this topic, where on Mythica we have now had to contend with some issues in terms of voltage holding of the source itself that would normally operate at -1 megavolt. A screen has been designed and installed. Another projection is that we should be close to achieve, say, 900 kilovolt, say, when we extrapolate the electric fields that we have to the full 5 stages. So that is going okay, although, say, we would like to accelerate to make sure that we will have this heating system in time for operation during, say, the SRO. Likewise, for the ion source, there is good progress in achieving on this full-scale, say, ion source, the full current density that we will need. Okay, on magnet power converters, we have multiple stages. Stage 1, which will be, say, the essential one, is completed, and commissioning, installation is completed, and commissioning of the individual systems is well underway. We will have also stage 2 power converters that will be, we have placed a number of contracts, and we have a number of new power supplies that are being, say, the contract of which is being prepared now and signed now for example, the ELM power supplies, which are IGBT type of converters, as opposed to thyristor power converters for all the 18 ELM power, coils. The cryogenic plant is now commissioning, is completed, and we started in December helium liquefaction. It's a little bit early, let's say, for ITER as such, but we will need finally this helium for the test facilities. So this is a picture that I took just last week. This vessel was actually constructed here in China and at record time, and we decided to install this test facility pretty much at the end of 22. It's regrettable that the project decided not to test all coils, I must say that, but at least we will test, we expect 4 coils. And so that is the cryostat, and it will be very useful, I believe, also to set up some infrastructure for testing of coils from other facilities. So I want to spend a few words to thank the community for having supported the definition of the ITER research plan in accordance with the new baseline. The research and technical baseline documents have been thoroughly revised. I don't have much time to spend on this. Of course, the main thing in the baseline was the reordering of things and plans, but for me it was very, very important to see so much work from all of you, from all the research community to make this important document, now completed. But, you know, I know also that there are a lot of experiments that need to engage to further validate our integrated modeling tools. So thank you for doing that. On the DMS, a few words on that as well. The DMS has been saved.
I mean, what is so cool about this organization is that it's all there for you to see. And if they get challenged, and I don't mean like in a bad way, but like if they get challenged with a question and they're stumped, they do this. They figure it out. And then they show their work. Boy, something like this in the UFO community would just be amazing, wouldn't it? I thought that's what we were going to get with the Sol Foundation. But I guess I was wrong. So let's go back 3 years ago and take a look at the ITER, the ITER story, according to them.
For billions of years, hydrogen fusion has powered the heat and light of our sun. But the mechanism behind the miracle, the conversion of hydrogen into helium by fusion, was only identified by physicists in the 1920s and 1930s. By the 1950s, the race to reproduce fusion reactions on Earth was underway in the Soviet Union, the United States, Europe, and Japan. A machine called a tokamak quickly outdistanced others in performance and became the predominant concept. In November 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan put forward the idea of an international project to develop fusion energy for peaceful purposes. The ITER project was born. The European Union and Japan joined the Soviet Union and the United States, and conceptual design work was launched. Increasingly detailed engineering work followed until the final design of ITER was approved by the members in 2001. 5 years later, with new members China, South Korea, and India, a site for the project was selected in France, Saint-Paul-les-Durance, Cadarache. The ITER organization was established by international agreement, and clearing and leveling works began on site under the responsibility of the French government. In August 2010, 25 years after the decisive encounter between Reagan and Gorbachev, construction started on the first buildings of the ITER scientific installation. The ITER headquarters was inaugurated in January 2013. Today, the site infrastructure required for first plasma is 80% complete. The assembly of the ITER tokamak was launched in May 2020, with the installation of the first major component, the base of the cryostat. In just a few weeks, the first of 9 vacuum vessel sectors, paired with 2 D-shaped toroidal field magnet coils, will be lowered into the tokamak pit. Scientific exploitation will begin in approximately 5 years with first plasma. Subsequent periods of experimentation and assembly will bring the machine to its full power configuration and fusion operation in 2035. ITER will open the way to harnessing the energy source of the sun and the stars, fusion, as a clean, safe, and unlimited source of energy for humanity.
All right. So that was their own story from 3 years ago. And you can see, yeah, it was 85 was when it was conceived of. God, I was actually right about something. And it's been going on ever since. And they started breaking ground. And now you see it's this pretty large facility in France, southwest France. And again, you've got 35 countries involved. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Could fusion energy bring peace to the world? Wouldn't that be something? You know, the world not fighting over resources. I mean, we often say it's about something else, like it's about, you know, whatever. Some country violated some other country's international whatever, and so they get invaded. But if you read between the lines and you look at the actual transcripts and the emails and the data, and understand actions speak louder than words, you see it's always about the resources. In one way or another, it's always about the resources. So could this relieve some of that strain? Yeah. Is it going to fix the world's problems? No. But it could absolutely take some of the strain off. If you can imagine countries not having to worry about how they're going to power their cities and how their citizens are going to get energy. I say again, this is not from a recovered alien vehicle. This is actual science and actual scientists working to accomplish this. Let's let the director go on here.
Foreseen now for over a decade. The first, it was, a massive gas injection system that later evolved because we were aware that we could not get the valves, performing enough close to the plasma to shut down reliably the plasma itself. So that's why the shutter pellet injection system was, conceived. And this is a work that was done by the community at large, the task force, the DMS task force that was led so well by Mikael Lennon, that unfortunately we lost last year. And I think that what the task force achieved together with the team in IO on such a short time scale is quite amazing. So the original DMS was mainly focused on the control of thermal loads and electromagnetic loads. So what would happen, for example, in the case of a VDE? And the problem of runaway electrons was, from my perspective, or from the perspective of many, maybe put a little bit under the carpet. But we know well we can expect what runaway electrons will do in a machine. And so part of this logic has been behind the rebaselining itself, the concept of sequencing of the project itself. So the most important point for me to make is that our new baseline is a radical improvement because it allows a full commissioning of the machine before we will move to tritium operation to gain experience with the DMS as on what we will install as a sort of sacrificial wall. So we will not put the water-cooled blanket from the beginning, the water-cooled first wall. We'll put, a first wall that will be able to operate up to full magnetic energy for a reasonable duration. Of course, we will need to put all the heating, as much heating as possible. Who knows, maybe we will even get in H mode. But important will be to make sure that the machine can be commissioned and disruption can be controlled before we will move to DT operation, at which point in time you are all aware that repair will be much more difficult to achieve. So now, before moving to some data about the project, I thought this time to give you some, some perspective of questions that I frequently get. And I'm very surprised by the questions I get from sometimes scientists and frequently from even politicians. So they come to ITER and say, oh, wow, what an engineering marvel. Thank you for going so fast. Thank you for taking this project ahead. But why is it so big? Why? Why is it so big when there are so many, that around the world that say that they can do things much smaller? So I have to contend with the issue of explaining that point. And I should tell you what I think is the fact of the matter. Because many of you don't know maybe why ITER was decided to be so big. First is to get the current. We need 15 megampere. I remember very well the community insisting first on ignition that would have required, to be conservative, in excess of 20 megampere. And finally, to make sure that to get the triple product that we want, we need 15 megampere. I remember this very well, at this aspect ratio. So, okay, that's what drove a lot of the machine design. Secondly, we need to have a certain distance between the plasma and the magnet. And this is not a question of superconductor, high temperature superconductor. It's a question that was driven by shielding on one side, insulation damage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But also in order to make sure that we would test the machine and we size the machine so that breathing could be achieved also in the inboard. And I remind you that at this point in time, dimensions are such that if we want to have any, chance to succeed, to have sufficient breathing ratio, we need in excess of 1 meter between the plasma and the TF coils. So when you put a meter between the plasma and the TF coil, you will need to increase the major radius by 2 meters. This is for a given plasma current. This is simply the fact of the matter. So, and the question that I get next is, but what would it be if we would design it today? Would it be different? And, you know, I have been in the design team more than 20 years ago, and I looked again at all the nodes and how we did the system code analysis, and I tell you, in my opinion, not so much. Maybe 20, 30 centimeters. Maybe we could use some of the know-how that was developed during the fabrication that we are also trying to communicate to the private sector. First, this question about the field. I hear frequently that the problem is that now that we have, the fact that we have high temperature superconductor would allow us to make ITER much smaller. I don't think so. Take into account that in the ITER cross-section, niobium-13 take only 4% of the cross-section. And niobium-13 can operate at higher field. It does not constrain at 12.5 Tesla. Only 4% of the cross-section is niobium-13. And the optimization was not driven by some cliff edge effect of niobium-13. Of course, it would be different with niobium-titanium. The work was done early in the EDAs to optimize the magnetic field. And when you put sufficient shielding, increasing the magnetic field, there is a problem of power flux, of course, that goes in the wrong direction. But there is a problem also of, let's say, controllability of the plasma itself. Different story would be if we would have no shielding. In this case, I completely agree that a burning plasma experiment that would operate for a short time, no problem. We can have, and we have the advantage to operate at much higher field. But it's a question about power flux for a short time. So this point was not invented recently. This was discussed also in the 80s. In the 80s and the 90s, we had the projects like BPX, CIT, and FIRE, which operated okay, and the current didn't reach 15 megampere. But say BPX that had 12 megampere, had a triple product, extrapolated triple product that was not so far from ITER, a little bit different maybe with FIRE. But the key thing was that they were short pulse. So they could not operate for a long pulse because, one, the power flux on the diverter was too high, and two, the question about, yes, the shielding. So this I mentioned, and I will leave it in the view graph for others. And I show also what happened in the late 90s, early 2000s, when different options for ITER. And if I may, if I would go back in the design of ITER, probably I would suggest to reduce a little bit the magnetic field, because that would yield to major simplification in some of the engineering interfaces, which drive the cost much more than we think. It's not simply size that drive the cost in at all.
Okay. I just realized this is probably way more interesting to me because of what I do in project management. So I think it's great, to be honest with you. Obviously, you have some great minds on this, so I'm sure the folks managing their projects over there are super squared away. But if you're just tuning in, we are talking about ITER, and we're talking about an ITER, that's International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. This is an agreement that was made in '85 between Gorbachev and Reagan about trying to create, excuse me, clean fusion. Has a lot of names: clean fusion, cold fusion, fission. But it's all typically the same thing. But what they are using is the same energy that our sun and stars use by harnessing the energies of plasma. It's fascinating stuff. And it sounds like we're really on the precipice of this going from a dream to a reality. Let's take a look in their own words from ITER This video is titled An Energy for Our Future.
We're all familiar with solids, liquids, and gases. But did you know there is a fourth state of matter, plasma, which makes up 99% of visible matter in the universe? On Earth, we come across plasma in a number of natural forms. For example, lightning, or the northern lights, aurora borealis. But we also know how to make plasma and use it in our everyday lives. Take a flat screen television, for example, or the fluorescent tubes that illuminate our public or commercial buildings. Atoms are composed of a positively charged nucleus of protons and neutrons surrounded by a cloud of negatively charged electrons. When atoms are subjected to high temperatures, millions of degrees Celsius, the electrons are separated from the nuclei, creating an ionized gas that we call plasma. In the center of stellar bodies like the Sun and the stars, gravitation creates the pressure and temperature that causes hydrogen nuclei to fuse. In these hot and dense centers, atoms never rest, and the hotter they get, the faster they move. In the Sun's core, where temperatures reach 15 million degrees Celsius, atoms collide at very high speeds and fuse. The fusion of light hydrogen atoms produces a heavier element, helium, and very large quantities of energy. To reproduce fusion in a laboratory on Earth, scientists use two isotopes of hydrogen: deuterium, composed of one proton and one neutron, and tritium, composed of one proton and two neutrons. A plasma provides the environment in which these elements can fuse and yield energy. Creating fusion requires maintaining a very high temperature plasma inside of a torus-shaped chamber called a vacuum vessel. Huge magnets surrounding the chamber create a magnetic field capable of keeping the plasma in suspension away from the walls. What is the purpose of creating fusion in the laboratory? The demand for energy in the world continues to rise. However, the use of fossil fuels such as coal, gas, and oil produces pollution and greenhouse gases. Fusion fuels are widely available and nearly inexhaustible. Deuterium can be distilled from all forms of water. Tritium will be produced during the fusion reaction as fusion neutrons interact with lithium. Terrestrial reserves of lithium would permit the operation of fusion power plants for more than 1,000 years, while sea-based reserves of lithium would fulfill needs for millions of years. Fusion reactions release 4 times as much energy as nuclear fission reactions at equal mass. Hydrogen fusion does not emit harmful toxins like carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases, or produce high-activity, long-lived nuclear waste. As a new source of clean, safe, and reliable energy, fusion could make a positive contribution to the challenges facing our planet.
I mean, how is that not insanely exciting? Okay, so we did just check this one out. This was their story there, but how is that not just blowing up with all the talk about free energy and all the talk about we're going to get it from some alien species or something? Why aren't we on this bandwagon? Is there a reason? We're talking no nuclear waste, no harmful nuclear waste, an energy source where one plant could literally get millions of years of power. Why are we not talking about this? Why aren't we all over this? I guess because people don't like stuff that takes a long time. I mean, this concept was created between Reagan and Gorbachev in 85. You know, it's 2025. We're talking 40 years later before we're active. And once the hardware is actually in place, secured, and safe for testing, it's going to be very exciting to see what results we get. And you better believe we'll be covering that here, because I'm on this bandwagon. In fact, I'm looking actively for ways I can help out and get involved, because this is something I can get behind. When I think about being responsible tenants on the earth, but also being realistic about the energy demands that we all have. Let's be real. This is something I could, look my kids in the face and be like, yeah, we did this for you and the grandkids and the great-grandkids and so on and so forth. It's energy and it's clean, y'all. And again, I hate to throw out the word free, but at the end of the day, it's essentially free, clean energy. So much potential, so little attention. It's interesting. Okay, we'll let the Director General finish up here.
So the last question is, the third question is about the cost itself, as I said. This we will try to address. The question about the ITER cost is a major problem. The ITER cost has been way too high, and we have to find the reasons behind that, and we have to find, and I am convinced that we could design ITER, we could build ITER for a fraction of the cost it has actually costed. There are a number of reasons in terms of the sharing, in terms of the politics around this project, and some of design solutions that have been, say, over costly. And we will have to address that. Even though now we are, I would say, on a much better time frame of execution, we still have to address that. Because the question, I don't think it's so much from fusion whether we can get more energy than the energy we put in. The big question is, will we ever be able to get more money than the money we put in? We see so much complexity in our technology that we have to address it, from my standpoint, to reduce such complexity in such a way to reduce the unit cost to acceptable level. And I want to mention also this question about what are the remaining challenges that we have in fusion, because at this conference, and also what happened before at the Fusion Energy Group, there is a lot of hype, there is a lot of expectation, but hype will not solve our problems. And so I'm very glad that the community is aware of that, and we should remind ourselves all the big challenges that we will have. Say, speaking before about tritium breeding, I was trying to look whether today we have a design on tritium breeding that we would fit in the ITER size, which, by the way, is quite generous. It's about 1.2 meters. Say, would we be able to achieve in ITER a breeding ratio in excess of 1? And I don't think so. We are not there. We don't have a design of the breeding blanket that would be able to sustain the power flux of ITER. So let alone what will happen next. So we have to solve this problem head-on, and I don't think this problem will get solved by itself. There is the question of power flux. We still have a situation, I remember 30 years ago when I started working in ITER, that I was told power flux will be solved, and we still have a situation where when we look at the ratio between power flux in the divertor and the average power flux on the first wall, about a factor of 100. So you can understand how serious this problem is, and I think it's still to be solved, because at this level of power flux, there is no design of a first wall that we can cope, let alone the divertor. The first wall in ITER is now all included, having to work at the power in some region of 2, 3, even 5 megawatt per square meter, when the average power flux is about 0.5 megawatt per square meter. So how can we, say, have a cost-effective technology that breed the tritium is a very big question. So very important to develop scenarios that have been long-lasting, and long-lasting has been the expectation that these scenarios would be developed. So now I come to tell you a bit about the project and how to make ITER useful now. So ITER is not my project, it's not their project, it's your project. This is something that belongs to the community. Our job is to make it go faster and Thank you for going so fast, Yangang, so that we also have some competition. So we have to get this done, and thank you, by the way, to the great contribution that we get from China in ITER. But ITER is, from my standpoint, should be useful now. So we have this fusion, say, knowledge transfer project, so we are working on that, and we think that for the community, it's also a training ground. It's not a place where you go and end your career. It's a place where you can learn. So to come to the end of my talk, we had restructured the organization in 2023. We have recovered the trust with our regulator. This was very important. We have reformulated and restructured most of our assembly contracts to be able to move at the pace that this project deserves. We have repaired the components, we have developed a new baseline, and we have, say, worked around the project and design control processes to move fast and reduce the open PCRs and whatnot that we are driving the cost up. So now in 2024 and 2025, I'm pleased to tell you, 2 years after my last intervention at the Fusion Energy Conference, the scheduled performance index in ITER is 1.01. This is the last number I got last week, and the cost performance against the new baseline is also in the green at 1.14. So one may think, okay, we got this because we just put the schedule in a more diluted way. This is not the case. This is actual financial data, okay? So with an SPI of 1.01, in 2024, we have achieved 35% more work than in any previous year, and 2025, we will increase this even further. So I come to the end of my talk, okay, just in time, SPI of 1, and then leave this slide, this video in the background for those of you who haven't seen ITER. Please come and visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your talk. Now we have...
Very good. Okay, so if you look at the ITER's website and the FAQ, one thing to make clear is, free energy, and that's why I hesitate to say it, because, free energy, it's kind of hype, right? So the thing is, the fuel is extremely abundant. It's clean. It's very energy dense. But the plants are still going to have operational costs, right? Materials, employees, just regular operational costs. But fusion is going to be sustainable and high amplification. So there will be cost, but the cost of generating the energy, when all is said and done, is going to be extremely low compared to other options out there on the market. And that's important because, again, when you say free energy, people are going to, kind of cash out, right? They've been talking about 0 point energy, free energy, like, I don't know, the 40s, the 50s, maybe the 50s and 60s. They've been talking about it. We haven't seen it. So at this point, it's kind of like, well, unless you believe, like Weinstein, that whole part, Eric Weinstein, that whole part of the scientific community has basically been hidden away and kind of restricted from working on these things, or working on these things in a black project capacity, right? And like a special access program or unacknowledged special access program where the military industrial complex, the government is still getting this technology, they're still getting this scientific knowledge, but they're keeping it away from private industry, private folks, or at least, that's the idea. As I understand it. I could be completely wrong. Just let me know. But I don't know that I buy that. I think that there's definitely been some weird shit that's gone on with our scientists, don't get me wrong. But how could you think about this for a second, right? You're talking about derailing an entire scientific community. So either it's this giant conspiracy where they derailed the entire, some of the most influential people in the scientific community, or they realized there wasn't a there. You know, and we have echoes of that. We have echoes of, oh yeah, this was an anti-gravity machine that the scientists made, but yeah, it never quite worked. So you know, we only spent $300,000-$400,000 on it, and now it's a bookshelf in the rich guy's house. Super weird. Okay, so we're going to nerd out for a minute here and get into some of the actual science, because when we hear science from some of these free energy folks, it almost sounds like make-believe. I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be a scientist. I don't claim to understand everything these folks are talking about. But I think it's easy to detect the real from the fake when it comes to a lot of these cats. So this is a ITER, and I think this was quite a while ago. Let me take a look. This was 16 years ago, y'all. So this is before they even had the building up and constructed. I'm not even sure if they had picked out where it was going to be built yet at this point. But he's describing ELMs and how to control them. A very, very important part of making this science work. So let's take a listen.
I am Alberto Loarte. I work in the Fusions and Technology Department, and I am in charge of confinement issues for ITER. What we do is with the external coils we have in all tokamaks, like ITER, we create a magnetic plasma current. By doing so, then we create a plasma, and then we apply heating methods, and we increase the energy of the plasma. Then at some point in the discharge, when the power we inject is high enough, there is an improvement of the containment of the energy of the plasma, which is called the H mode. And in this way, the amount of energy that is contained in the plasma increases typically by a factor of 2. There are periodic releases of energy, which are called ELMs. And these ELMs are a phenomena that was discovered when this high confinement regime was discovered. And they are analogous of the type like a solar flare. And it looks like, let's say an analogy is like if you could have a pressure cooker or a balloon which inflates, and then at some point you have some release valves, and when the pressure of this gas in the balloon or the plasma in the tokamaks exceeds a given value, you have a release of energy. So the effect of the ELMs on the materials that protect the vacuum vessel in ITER are mainly due to the overheating. The material gets a large energy flux in a very short time, and the temperature of the surface goes up, typically thousands of degrees Celsius. This has, for ITER, two consequences. One is that, of course, the material is eroded, is evaporated, and you lose material. And because we expect to have many of thousands of these events per discharge in ITER, the accumulated erosion is large, so we would need to replace the components with a higher frequency than we plan. And the other one is that impurities come into the plasma and they contaminate the plasma. In order to operate ITER in a reliable way, you have to make sure that the energy fluxes that arrive to the components inside the machine are such that they don't increase the temperature very much. And in ITER, there are two schemes that are being implemented in the design to do this. One is to trigger these events at will instead of relying on their natural triggering by the pressure exceeding a limit. And this we do with the injection of frozen pellets of deuterium into the plasma. What we do is we create an overpressure, very small overpressure, and this leads to a small release. The objective is to decrease the energy the size of the energy that the plasma loses by a factor of 20 with this pellet injector. And the other one is to perturb the magnetic field at the edge with internal coils so that we open a sort of escape for the plasma energy, and instead of the pressure or the energy growing and relaxing with ELMs, what we do is we try to self-control this rise and stay under the limit. In this way you just suppress completely the ELMs. One of the things we have learned in the last few years is that the control of ELMs has actually become a key issue for the achievement of the Q equal 10 goal.
Wow.
Vacuum.
Fascinating stuff, y'all. Let's take a look at the actual construction. Putting this thing together like a puzzle. And I think that's what they call it. Yeah, the largest puzzle. So let's take a look at this concept. Comes out in 85. And they're working with thousands of scientists in 35 countries at this point, putting together this project. So it's already insanely complicated because you've got 35 countries involved, all bringing different things to the field. But then you've got this insanely complicated piece of machinery you have to build to prove out this concept. And it's no wonder it's taken this long, especially if they want to do it right. There's a difference of just trying to do it and doing it correctly so it works. And clearly that's what they're doing.
ITER will be the world's largest experimental facility to demonstrate the scientific and technical feasibility of fusion power. 30 meters in diameter and nearly as many in height, the ITER tokamak will house a large number of subsystems and components. The size and weight of the major components, the tiny tolerances for the assembly of major systems, the diversity of manufacturers, the tight schedule, all of these elements combine to make ITER an engineering and logistics challenge of enormous proportions. The principal assembly activities will be performed in the tokamak building, where the ITER device will be installed inside of a partially embedded concrete bioshield. For the duration of assembly activities, the tokamak building will be operated as a clean area and maintained at a constant temperature to avoid dimensional changes in the largest components. Pre-assembly activities will take place in the adjacent assembly hall. Assembly of the ITER tokamak will proceed in a bottom-up fashion. First, the lower feeders for the ITER magnets will be put in place. Then, the base of the cryostat, the largest single component of the ITER machine, is lifted into position. The next components assembled are the lower cylinder of the cryostat, thermal shields, and the temporary support structures for colloidal field coil number 6, the smallest of the set of 6. A set of spare pre-compression rings are the next in line, together with the central support structure and the 18 gravity supports for ITER's huge toroidal field coils. Thermal shields that will protect the steel support structure are then attached. And finally, colloidal field coil number 6 is lowered into the pit, followed by PF coil number 5. In order to prepare for the arrival of the pre-assembled vessel sectors, the inner support column, the work floor, and the 7 beams are put in place to stabilize the structure during the assembly phase. While the cryostat is being assembled in the tokamak hall, parallel activity is in full swing in the assembly hall. It's here where the sub-assembly of the 9 40-degree sectors is being prepared. Each set made up of a vacuum vessel sector, the surrounding thermal shields, and 2 toroidal field coils. In order to successfully maneuver hundreds of very large tokamak components into position, a very precise made-to-order set of tools is currently under construction. A special sub-assembly tool will suspend each of the 9 sectors of the vacuum vessel from its top, install associated thermal shielding, and rotate 2 toroidal field coils into position. This procedure will be repeated consecutively to achieve 9 sub-assemblies, which will be transferred into the tokamak pit for the final sector assembly. The lifting system will be comprised of a pair of independent bridge cranes mounted on rails that run the entire length of the tokamak and assembly halls to form a continuous 175-meter-long crane bay. Working together, the 4 375-ton main hoists will handle loads of up to 1,500 tons. With more than 18 meters height, the central solenoid, the magnet in the center of the machine, will be the tallest lift of assembly operations. The heaviest single load will be the base of the cryostat, which weighs in at 1,200 tons. In some cases, components standing 20 meters high and weighing hundreds of tons will have to be maneuvered into position within tolerances of 2 to 3 millimeters. The accurate alignment of the tokamak components, particularly of the magnet system and in-vessel components, is essential to the successful operation of the machine. Assembly sequences have been planned with this in mind and will utilize sophisticated optical metrology techniques at each step of the assembly process. In all, 161 different types of custom tools will be required to assemble, lift, and finally maneuver ITER's supersized components. The tools will have loading capacities that vary from 500 tons for the upending tool that will turn vacuum vessel components from horizontal to vertical, to 1,500 tons for the heavy lifting tools, used to lift the sub-assembled sectors into the tokamak pit for final assembly and welding. There, the largest purpose-built tool, the in-pit assembly tool, will grasp all 9 sectors together, 3,800 tons, in order to align the vessel structure. The complete assembly of the ITER machine will take about 4 years. Following main assembly and alignment of the vacuum vessel, the second assembly phase, the installation of in-vessel components, will proceed with specialized remote handling devices.
Wow. Fascinating. So you really can see it all coming together over time. And again, I think some of the more interesting videos are these old videos with some of these scientists. This one, again, 16 years ago, looking at what they call the science of nothing, which I think is also very interesting. Check this out.
Is the science of nothing. You might think, oh, nothing doesn't create any great challenges. Hello, I'm Robert Pierce. I'm in charge of the ITER vacuum group and hence responsible for vacuum on ITER. So ITER will really be one of the biggest and most complex vacuum systems ever built on Earth. The main vacuum chamber has a vacuum volume of 1400 meters cubed. We're trying to generate temperatures which are many millions of degrees, and vacuum has a number of good properties. Of course, the first one is that it's an insulator, a bit like your thermos flask has vacuum in. It insulates that temperature from the wall of the vessel. The second reason we need a vacuum vessel and good vacuum within that vessel is that one of the key things for the plasma is its purity, and vacuum helps in giving you that purity. To make a vacuum on ITER, it's a little bit like your vacuum cleaner. We use vacuum pumps. So we start with mechanical pumps, and then we move on once we've got a vacuum of a certain level to using what we call cryogenic pumps. Now, cryogenic pumps are again a little bit like your fridge. If you notice on your fridge, frosts up. If you leave the door open, all the particles of moisture stick to the cold surfaces. In the cryogenic pump, we just have a big, very cold surface, and the particles stick to that surface. So making a large vessel like ITER tight with no leaks from a vacuum point of view is a very large challenge. In terms of leakage into the vessel, then for ITER we have to ensure that all of the assembly and the design and the manufacturing and the handling of all the components is such that we're leak-free, and this requires working to high standards across all the different parties. People think of vacuum as being nothing, and hence that there's no forces involved. But if you create a vacuum, then you produce 10 tons of force per meter squared. So you can imagine on ITER, where we have a very large vessel, we have very large forces from the outside, effectively compressing that vessel.
On April 10th, at 6 o'clock in the morning, the ITER site was already alive with energy. The air buzzed with anticipation. In the massive assembly hall, more than 50 engineers and technicians worked in perfect sync, each one preparing for a moment years in the making. It was time. Sector Module number 7, the first module of the ITER vacuum vessel, was ready for installation into the tokamak pit. A steel giant, weighing an astonishing 1,350 tons, stood waiting to rise. At exactly 10 o'clock a.m., the command was given. The big lift was on. All eyes turned skyward, breaths held. The enormous payload now rested in the hands of one person, the crane operator. Their task? To carry the behemoth more than 100 meters across, clearing the pit wall and delivering it with millimetric precision. The sector module now hovered directly above the tokamak pit. Phase 2 had begun. The most delicate part of the mission, to land the module between the massive pit walls and the central column. Down below, in the pit's narrow confines, the atmosphere was intense. Technicians moved quickly and precisely, performing final measurements, making micro adjustments. The command echoed through the radios. It's time to go down. And slowly, silently, 1,350 tons of
It's pretty cool to see 16 years ago
But if this was possible,
that scientists talk about this in a theoretical, and then to see them just this year reach this milestone,
deep commitment were at the core.
actually doing it.
Long hours, endless coordination, and unwavering focus.
So again, I cannot stress how exciting this is. If you are like me and did not know a lot about this organization, I think you should look into it, especially if you care about energy and the future. I think it's going to be just a pivot point in our history. Very fascinating stuff. Okay, we've got some breaking news, y'all. We're going to go live. It looks like France is launching a satellite into space. And we do cover space news, of course. So we're going to check this out.
À tous de DDO, attention pour la séquence finale lanceur. Top, allez sur au moins 5 minutes.
So I just want to make sure I give out the right information. Yes, this is France, a French company, Ariane Space. This is the Sentinel-1D satellite. And I guess it was important enough to broadcast it live. So we are here watching. I mean, I'm always down for a good rocket launch. I mean, if you didn't notice from my intro video, I'm like a little kid when I see those things light up and shoot off into space. It's incredible to me. The amount of power in some of those rockets is just wild. Alright, so I think we're going to get to a countdown here eventually. I tell you, that would be an exciting job, right? Whether it's NASA or some kind of private company. Boy, being involved in that field, should have paid more attention in math. Oh, they get you all excited with that coolant exhaust. So while we're waiting for this blast off here, I just want to review ITER, International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. Within that, you've got the tokamak. It creates a fusion plasma that's then confined by strong magnetic fields. That plasma then generates a heat dissipation. And then we do what we do from there. We know how to turn heat into energy at that point. The exciting thing is that what they need to use to create the energy, there's a ton of it out there that could last literally millions of years. It's clean burning. In fact, it doesn't burn at all. It generates heat from the plasma that it generates and captures. So there's no burning. There's no carbon emissions, dirty emissions. There's no plutonium left afterwards. No weapons grade nuclear fuel is left after this. Oh, here we go, folks.
2, 1, top, allumage de CSR et décollage. La propulsion est nominale. Début de la manœuvre en roulis. Pilotage calme, la trajectoire est nominale, les paramètres à bord sont nominaux.
Copernicus Sentinel-1D has started its journey on board Europe's newest rocket, Ariane 6, hauling itself against the gravity of our planet.
Amazing view.
Okay, so I know that I didn't want to say anything until we saw it get into orbit, because I know that that's kind of like the pinnacle, right? Most of them actually fail before they even get into space, right? Before they even get out of the atmosphere. And even more of them fail getting into orbit. Like, it's very rare, especially for these private companies to actually get one into orbit. And this looks like, I didn't want to jinx it, so I just waited. And it looks like we are successfully in orbit with this rocket. So congratulations to Arianespace on a successful launch of their satellite. I'm telling y'all, that is a feat. There's quite a bit that goes into successfully launching a rocket like that. Okay. So, before we close it out, I know we kind of got interrupted by that live launch. I wasn't prepared for that. So, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, ITER, again, folks, this is something you should be looking into if you care at all about energy and the future of energy. It's so important. It's one of those things you don't realize how important it is until you have to go without it. And then you go, oh yeah, it's pretty important we have electricity. So imagine living in a world where we've tapped our fossil fuels and we have no other alternatives. We know wind is great, solar is great, but they're not good enough. There's not a reason enough to switch over to those as far as the impact it's going to have on the environment, because they're just going to have other negative impacts on the environment that for whatever reason people don't like to talk about. How about all the trash you're going to throw away using all that stuff? So, thermonuclear, clean nuclear energy is where it's at. And Reagan and Gorbachev knew this in 1985. That's why they started the ITER. We've got 35 countries involved. And if you're involved in energy and not involved in this at all, or not even aware of this or looking into this, I think that you should. We've got a magnetic fusion device that's going to prove fusion at a large scale could provide energy. It creates a fusion plasma and then confines it with strong magnetic fields. All science we know works and we can get behind. So get behind it. I know I am. Until someone proves me otherwise, I'm 100% for it. All right, thanks for joining me on this space about energy. I hope you learned a little something. I hope you look more in to ITER. I think it's important. I think it's important for our future. I think it's important for the future of our children and our children's children. I really do feel that strongly about it. Okay, everyone, have a fantastic evening. We might be doing some election coverage later tonight. Take a look at those results. So if you want to, join us for that. If not, have a great night, everyone.